This topic is character design, and today we're going to talk about how we have translated the old sprites of a classic game like Rise of the Triad to next generation characters. And today with me I have a group of astounding people. I have my lead 3D artist with me, Nick Quackenbush.
Hello.
Hello, Nick. And our lead character artist, Pollitt.
Good evening.
And we have our art director, Arturo.
Hola.
And one of our character artists, Arun. Arun?
Hi.
Hey. Hey, Arun. All right, guys. First of all, we're going to talk a bit about the
Hi.
Hi. First of all, we're going to talk a bit about the whole technical process of how you actually work with next generation characters, because truth be told, it is very different from 95 when you basically just took a sprite, or you took pictures of a character and you dressed up and played that character in the game, like they actually did in Rise of the Triad and Mortal Kombat. The original Mortal Kombat is another example of that. But it's very, very different today. So first of all, we're gonna get down to some good technical talk here about what the process basically is when you create a next generation 3D model. So I want to hand it over to you first, Nick. What are the basics in 3D modeling, and what tools do you use?
Well, when we started talking about the game, we had to decide, how detailed we're going to go with our characters. And we kind of went crazy and just decided to go full-blown kind of next-gen. So we started to kind of figure out the process in creating. Did we want to spend the time creating, this high-resolution mesh to transfer details over? Did we just want to make a stylized game where that may not have been necessary? But at the end of the day, we followed, it's fairly standard process in character creation, where we just take a super high resolution mesh that our character artists create, and then it's called baking, and we essentially bake that down onto a low resolution mesh. And that creates the super detailed character that you see in games. Because we were doing this, we knew this was going to add a lot of time to game development. This is one of the most taxing things you can do, and luckily we have some pretty awesome artists that do that. Our artists also have to set up for animation. They have to make sure that all the little details are in place, so that when he moves, that you're not seeing jagged edges all over. And Chris, our lead 3D artist, is the guy to go for that, since he knows anatomy and he knows where a flactoid and trapezoid and all those weird muscles go, and it's nice to have somebody like that in there.
Chris, can you maybe talk a bit about how that process actually is when you basically start from scratch and you're going to create this character in 3D space?
Well, technically, there's still a whole load of concepting before we even get into the character stuff, and I don't know if you want to start going into, how we design the characters and concept, or you just want to.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. When you actually are going to create these characters from scratch as original characters, you don't have original refs. We use our art directors and concept artists to do that. And Arturo, you have been creating some great characters. For some of those that we really wanted to reinvent instead of just remake. And one of those characters that have been drawn out from scratch is, for instance, El Oscuro. What is the process when you start up with a fresh character that later has to be translated into 3D?
Oh, yeah. Well, the process begins understanding what the people of these days want to see, and about
I want to see boobs and guns.
exactly, and also take in consideration what the players of the old game want. We have to choose what details are what details represent better, and what details can be erased in this new version. So we choose reference that tell to us shit.
What's that, Arturo?
We're gonna beep that out.
So yeah, you're basically saying that we use the sprites as a foundation to expand upon, keeping the original aspects, but making them, more next gen and stuff, while not alienating the fans with something, completely new, but having something that they don't recognize, but they go, I remember this, but I don't remember it looking so awesome. so they have that nostalgic feeling at the same time as coming across something new.
Exactly. As you remember, all the sprites of Rise of the Triad were using photographs of the staff of Apogee back.
Yeah, they were so lazy back then.
Yeah.
Drawing, what's that?
They actually spent a lot of time dressing up. I still remember the old photos from Joe Ziegler dressed up as Sebastian Chris. They actually made like this the cardboards around the chair, the joysticks and everything.
Exactly.
Maybe that was a bit more fun than actually drawing them, because you actually had to do something physical. But the process is very different today. But how when you decide to draw a character, I imagine you can't just like draw it. You have to use special techniques, I guess, to actually make sure that it's as easy as possible for the 3D artist later on to translate it into a real model, right?
Yeah. Part of the process is get reference. We have the luck to have on board Apogee software people. For example, Joe Ziegler, that was Sebastian Christ in the original Rise of the Triad. He also is Sebastian Christ in this version. So he took photographs of himself and send them to us. So along the concept art that was previously done, what we do was literally take these pictures and sculpt a base mesh to extract those details using the same photograph. So that is a good detail for the people that know Joe Ziegler, because he's a great guy. He has a strong presence in the community. He was I think a moderator in the Gearbox Software Forum, so he is well known in this in the community. So I think it's good thing to have him on board as the new Sebastian Christ. So this is the process, a mix between old and the new techniques, and I think that's a really cool thing. Yes.
And there's also a great amount of homage to the original game by actually deciding to use real life references instead of completely reinventing. The funny thing about this is that they even did real life references for the robot. They used like a robot from Doctor Who or something like that for the actual robots in the game. And today you obviously you would do that differently. And Arturo,
without the copyright infringement.
Exactly. And Arturo, you've been a great part of actually redesigning these robots. What does it take to design like a robot? Because those are also characters, even though they don't have the basic character aesthetics. It's pretty much hard surface modeling all the way through. How did you take one of those characters and reinvented it?
Well, first we have to define what are these robots, because if the robot is, for example, a prototype, it has a different way to be built. And for example, if the robot is constructed in an ensemble line, then you have another type of construction type, and we had that in mind when we were designing the robots along our concept artists. So what we did is gather some reference of old and new robots, always trying to take in consideration all the panels, all the rivets, and all the logical ways to construct them. So, for example, the ballistic craft is a mech that has all the logical ways to construct it, but also has a Hoover system, for example, that is something that obviously doesn't exist in our world, but we have this freedom because Rise of the Triad has this crazy way to be. It's a world where we have these crazy weapons, these crazy powers, and we can do whatever we want. So that's a cool thing. And
Yeah, it gives you nice freedom, like not to get bogged down. Like a good example was with General Darien. The original started out with a like a rocket launcher kind of thing, bazooka, and that just went full blown into a mechanical hand that is the bazooka. And now he's some crazy cyborg man instead of just a guy with a weapon.
The amount of work that went into that arm actually designing it, because when the character artist sits down and are drawing the original concepts for this arm, it sounds pretty simple. Okay, we're gonna have a cool looking arm that actually that is a rocket launcher, but then he actually has to go into all these technical drawings because it has to be animated as well. It has to flip out. And then that's where it gets interesting, and where it maybe crosses the line a bit between doing something that looks cool and something that would actually also work in real life. And that is all the very interesting part of reinventing these things, because instead of just reinventing them visually, you also have to reinvent them mechanically.
Yeah, the orthographics were pretty cool for that, because they actually had to make sure the arm could fold out and actually move and stuff. Like his hands, like how would that move out of the way for like the rockets to come out and stuff like that. So there was a whole set of orthographic views, front, back, left, right, and then it's quite different from when you see a concept from like of some characters where it's just like a 45-degree view you see like from the front and then maybe from the back.
Yeah.
But when you're doing something so technical as that, you need to know exactly what's going on. You can't just go, oh, what does the back look like? I'll just make it up. Because it just doesn't work like that.
Exactly. And when going from these concepts, Chris, you're the guy that basically gets the concepts or gets the face references. We pretty much throw everything at you, and then you kind of have to figure out how to split out these tasks, who is going to do what, and those you're going to do yourself. How are you building those up from the ground? What technical features do you use, and what applications do you use, and what is the can you take us through the like step-by-step process of how to interpret the concept arts or the references you get into actual next generation characters?
Well, what a lot of people don't realize is the actual production side of game art. Like, we don't just go, oh, let's make some art, and then, we do the art, and then we do some more art. We have to plan it in advance as to what we're going to do. Like, so say we have, so many characters, and we have this much time to do them in. We can't just, make a new one every, time. So it's good to set up, like a bunch of base meshes, to help you along those. So you're not making, like, say, a new hand every time. You're not making a new, completely new boot or head and stuff. So, they'll look different, but you won't have to start from scratch, you know what I mean? So we'll have a set height for a person, and I'll make a base mesh of a person, literally, and that'll have the correct topology and the way it deforms and stuff, so that when it comes to animating, even though it'll be like transposed onto a new character, it'll still animate in the same way, and because they're made from the same foundation.
Yeah.
That way. So keeping modularity in mind, we slice a character up into lots of different segments and see how much we can, well, not like reuse, but expand upon those pieces. So it just makes it, more like a production line, really, I guess.
Yeah. And when we look back at how little time we actually had to create this game,
we have a tiny budget with no time, but
exactly
still managed to get quite a high standard out there, which is excruciating on us.
And again, that's the basic principle of working as an indie developer, but doing something AAA, because those things really rarely hangs together. Usually if you do AAA development, you have a 100-man team and you spend maybe 2 or 3 years on a big game. And the indie games, basically it's in the definition that an indie game is a smaller independent game that has a relatively short production period that can get out there to the fans pretty quickly, and they can give feedback on it. And we're pretty much in an indie mindset, but we're trying, and I think we're doing a really great job at putting out these AAA visuals. And that, I guess that's also why you actually need to figure out how to do all of these characters that first of all, it seems impossible to be able to do all of these characters at AAA quality in this small amount of time, but you really managed to figure out a way of doing this as a whole modular piece.
Yeah, we had to work smarter instead of harder. Like we just couldn't work faster, but like we had to make sure we were doing things the most optimized way we could do to get good stuff out.
I talked about this in the last podcast, and it's extremely important for the organization system to be in place. And with everybody hailing from separate countries and most of our conversations happening over Skype, it's the system we have in place for organization and the open kind of community aspect we have in terms of critiques, in terms of brainstorming. This is all necessary in our type of environment, because we just have to make sure that we can get these done in a short time frame, and we need everybody kind of on board to help us get there. And we have some pretty decent systems in place that help us, communicate and help us focus. And a lot of what we did was we focused on planning, like Chris said, and he kind of went through, and we just made sure that, while, in bigger games you might have, a unique hand for every character, we could not do that. We just don't have time to do that. So we try various tricks in terms of, repurposing assets, but kind of hiding them and changing them to make sure they fit the other character that they're on.
Like everyone has the same inside mouth. I mean, no one's gonna go, hey, this mouth looks like the inside of that other guy's mouth.
Exactly. Well, and stuff like that's going to allow us, to try to accomplish visuals that are out of our range, and we just got to focus on, optimizing them. Like Chris said, we just got to focus on the organization aspect of it.
Yeah. Good side was the the team aspect of it. Like you were saying, having everyone helping out and stuff. There's like a really big difference between like our team and like places I've worked at with other people. Like even when we were like still a mod team, like in the Duke Nukem days, there was a huge difference between Interceptor and the average mod team you'd see, because there was management there and everyone was helping each other. Like I must do like, I don't know, 5 or 6 paint overs in a week, just of someone else's work, just going over, saying, no, you need to tweak this and change that.
Crit Master Chris, as we call you.
Crit Master. And he makes a very valid point, and I talked about in the last podcast, is that the reason why Duke Nukem got to where it was because Fred had set up he had set up a system that was, he wanted to emulate this bigger game company way to accomplish a goal. And since then, I mean, we are light years beyond the team management that was then. So, I mean, we had okay to good team management for Duke Nukem, and translating to here, the team management we have and the structure is is pretty great. I mean, we have a lot of systems.
It's not better than other places.
Yeah.
That again translate into the whole aspect of that Chris talked about of getting critique and feedback on your work. It is so hard in a physical studio to actually sit down and get instant feedback every day on even the smallest tweaks you're doing to the character, because you simply can't gather the entire team, 4 or 5 times a day to tell them, hey, okay, I adjusted the left boob a bit to the top. How does this look? Because the rest of the team have their own stuff to be working on. So basically, in a physical studio, you're working on your character, and maybe on weekly meetings you present, okay, this is where I'm at. But a week of character design full time, that's pretty much a character. And with our way of doing it, you get feedback every single day. Arun handed in, for instance, the what he felt was the finalized character for Ty Barrett, and you just saw all the feedback on all the paint overs, all the boob paint overs that Chris did for that character. That was
oh gosh,
that was insane.
If you thought there were a ton of boob paint overs for that, you should have seen the boob paint overs for IP Freely. Chris went to town on that guy.
Oh yeah.
Well, I think the cool thing of this is at the end of the day, we have to realize that in almost 8 months of development, we have more than 12 characters done just by 3 character artists. So I think that's a really good. Those are really good numbers if you think about it.
And when we got to QuakeCon, Chris had already done all of our gods, including Taradino, and that was 5 to 6 months into development. That is the majority of the character set in the game. And then later on we got William, Guilherme, and Arun on board to help out on some of the more different characters in the game. So speaking of that alone, to see how the planning really translated into this whole production line of characters and how fast they were pumped out to a really, really great quality, that's just amazing to see. And it's not the same as working on something that you did before, Chris, with these hugely interesting characters like a pick cop, for instance, for Duke Reloaded. But that's what makes this a really, really hard and challenging job as well, because everyone would imagine doing a soldier, a basic World War II like looking soldier. Those have been done 1,000 times before, and it's just a boring piece of work. But I can imagine that it really isn't, because you have the job to make this World War II looking character really interesting. How was the process on that?
Well, it was quite. They're like almost stylized in those ones because we wanted to keep the fun of it in a sense, and definitely using our team members' faces for the actual characters in the game added fun for at least us. I'm not sure if the fans will go, "Hey, I know that guy. He's one of the developers."
Yeah.
But it definitely added to that, and as we got more to the bosses, we had to split things up even more, precisely and delicately. Because when we got to QuakeCon, people were really surprised by how much we had done in such a short time. But that was right before we'd done any of the bosses, and bosses require so much more time and effort and that. So we had to split up into some extra people and stuff. So
yeah.
I mean, we got Gil on just to be a creature artist. I saw some of his creature work, and I was like, "Hey, this guy's going to waste. We need to snap him up." Because that's one of the great things about Interceptor, that we take on new talent. They've got the artistic skills, but they don't know the technical sort of background, and that's sort of keeping them out of the industry. When Gil joined us, his topology was awful. It was just, let's throw polygons at it. But his artistic skill was bang on. He knew what to do when it came to sculpting and stuff. And we saw that. And now his topology is fine. It just took a couple of weeks of us saying do this, and just more hands-on telling them how to do it, and now we've got a full-on extra character artist.
That's so great when you see a guy that a studio at his current moment probably wouldn't hire at full time, or maybe get him on as an intern, but you guys have seen how little it actually takes from the feedback side. Great constructive feedback, and in a couple of months, this guy have turned 180 degrees into a completely capable AAA character artist. Because Chris, every time we get an application, I have no clue if this guy is good or not, because if I think it looks good, you come up with all these things. Hey,
yeah, I'm just like, no, you're wrong. Oh,
yeah.
God, why'd you even say that?
And then we see these guys transform into these great character artists. And speaking of this was a huge challenge for Arun. When working with Ty Barrett, because we basically needed this strong female character that had sexy curves. Arun, can you maybe talk a bit about the challenges you faced while actually creating Ty Barrett? She's the main female character, so to speak, in the game.
Yeah. Actually, I was not sure what I was looking for. So, in starting, because Frederik told me the other proportion, but we had something different in concept art. So it was little confusing for me. But somehow I got it.
Okay.
I think the big thing is again, it's going back to our it's going back to kind of the atmosphere, the open critique atmosphere that we have, and you see that with that character is that we tried a little bit of a different process, I think, with that in terms of giving Arun almost free reign over that when we were a bit more focused elsewhere. I guess Chris can talk a bit more about that, and then you just saw just hundreds of critiques come in over the next few weeks to try to get it to where the team wanted it. And that kind of atmosphere, it's a tough balance, because we can, there is a such thing as too much critiquing versus not enough critiquing. And
too many chefs.
well, yeah, exactly. And that's the balance that we have to strike here at the team, is that we got to make sure that when somebody does have something to say, that either it's taken into account if it needs to be taken into account, and it needs to be dismissed if it needs to be dismissed. I mean, not all critiques are valid, unfortunately. A lot of people have lots of things to say, but when it comes down to it, Chris, we all have a very strong understanding that Chris is going to be the final say here.
Yeah.
So he can put his foot down. He
coming in, some people will be like, oh, we need this and that, but is it necessary to make that character? Or are you just going, oh, this would be cool, let's stick that in. Oh, this will be cool, let's stick that in.
There is some basic understanding in how this actually works, because it's great that everyone can give feedback, but also some of the feedback or some of the stuff that people want is not really possible to due to the technical aspects of the character. An example is when for instance we know Dave is very very excited about this game, and he wants something in a character when the character is basically finished and baked. That's also where we have to explain that, okay, once a character is actually done, it's pretty hard to go in there and remove or add something without actually going back and doing the character again from scratch. So there is a huge difference between the actual constructive feedback that Chris gives, and he has the final saying on all characters, compared to just the basic things that are really not possible. But it's not something you usually would know unless you are an actual artist or technical character artist. And that goes the same for the other leads. We all comment on things. For instance, we comment on everything from concept art to environment art and character art. And Chris has the final saying on all characters. The same goes for Nick. Nick has the final saying on all environment pieces. That or everything related, non-related to characters. And same goes for Arturo. The cool thing is Arturo is the concept artist and the art director, so he has the final saying on his own things. But
he manages himself.
Yeah.
But Lorelei needs to be 8 feet tall. Ship it.
But Nick, you have also been working on characters. You got one of the most, probably the most detailed character we have in the entire game.
He's killing me.
The enemy. How was the process on that? Because I saw the time lapse video that is just insane. We're gonna put that up later here on our YouTube channel.
It's like an hour.
Yeah.
But it's sped up.
Well, the time lapse at an hour is almost unwatchable, so I have to work on that. He's not a character, so I mean he is a hard surface object, but the process is difficult because my issue is I want to over detail everything, and I want to put in all these details, and I want to, especially I convince myself that because it's a character, it has to be absolutely perfect. And that's a tough balance that I have and am having. But it's just the amount of detail, and I don't envy character artists one bit because, just working on this one guy versus, like environment set pieces or weapons, you kind of just realize like they're under an extreme amount of pressure to get the details right. And you can see that with like the process that Chris goes through with his character artists is just seeing them kind of finely tune these things into works of art, and I come to respect that a lot more than I may have.
Yeah, and I remember watching you working on this thing. I also watched the live stream where you streamed some of the work you did on it, and wow, it was just insane because you and I have kind of the same approach where we take one piece at a time, and then we over detail it, put it aside, take the next piece.
Way.
That's the same.
Well, I built my block out and I got it all nice and neat, and I got the general details in there. But then, once you start like going into a piece and you start working on it, at some point you got to cut yourself back the hell off. You got to tell yourself, hey, you're done with that, and put it aside. And that's a very tough thing to do. And to be honest, in a game production environment, unfortunately, you have to only do the amount of details that you can afford to do, and that's just part of the process, and that's tough for me to let go of.
a big part of it is like viewing it as the whole piece of art is a polish phase. Like you have to be able to let that piece of art go at any point. So like one way to look at it is you're working on it overall, so you do it up in layers. Like you go from the bigger detail layers, down to the smaller ones, and you just keep putting that in. So at any point you can hand it over to someone who needs it quicker. Like say, oh, PR needs this right now, so we've got to hand it over. And it's no good handing something that's half done because you only got half of it. But if you've got something which is a whole but can be polished, they can still use that. So that's it's just how the game industry is. You've got to have it now.
Speaking of the industry in general, let's talk a bit about what others have done. How others have tackled the same challenge as we have. Because truth be told, it is something that is really tough to do, to reinvent something that others or the team previously many years ago have done one time, and doing it again, but a way more interesting. We could maybe talk a bit about other games that have done this thing, and I would like to talk a bit about one of our old projects, Duke Reloaded, because Chris, your characters, Duke Nukem, specifically the head of Duke Nukem and the pickup, have gotten quite some attention on both good and bad attention on different forums. Mostly good because it's really good, but bad because people have emotions. Some people think a pickup should look funny and goofy, while all others think it should look really scary. That character, what was the process and something like that means so much to people, and it's such a big
I know,
icon.
like when there's like a fan base to something, that they have their own, they take control of it. They don't let you do anything. They're like, no, this is how we want it. You can't do it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting really, because as well as them like having a lot of possession over it. They give you a lot of input, like more input you'd get otherwise. So really, they help you guide the way a certain character should be. I mean, with Duke Nukem, there's a huge like fan base there, and the original did a lot of parodies of films and stuff, and some aspects of it were cheesy and some of it were more masculine guns, blah. And you can see that conflict happen in the fan base, like when you redesign something.
Yeah.
Like you want them to feel the nostalgia in it, but you can't play to every single direction, because then it just becomes like a jack of all trades and a master.
Generic.
You've got to generic. You've got to pick your direction and go with it. And with Duke Reloaded, we wanted it to stay true, but at the same time be more gritty and real, not as cheesy. I mean, we still had humor in there, but it wasn't picking up turds kind of humor.
Not picking
Turd
up
collectibles. Instead of coins, we're having turds.
But yeah,
That's good.
that is a great example, Chris, of how to actually reinvent characters, and that is also why you were the perfect fit for lead on Rise of the Triad, because you really got the concept of taking an original beloved character and just turning it into something awesome. And I don't know if I told you guys this before, but that is something that really proves how great of an artist you really is. Doing something like reinventing characters is when I visited Gearbox, and they actually told me that that Pickup and Duke Nukem model were the best they have seen in the franchise, and that really just proves something that you got on to something you're really good at. And I believe you also won a contest, right, with the Master Chief thing?
Oh yeah, I've forgotten about that. Yeah, I didn't win, but
you were featured, right?
I was featured on Kotaku for it, so that was nice.
Yeah.
Like the only other one, like when it first was the guy who won it, and then there was me. So that was I was really liked, that someone thought, hey, this is cool. So and it was also great to hear that from Gearbox. Like that was super cool of them to say that.
Exactly, and they amongst all people, well, it was actually the Triptych team, the original creators of Duke Nukem, and they amongst all people know how to critique these things, because they actually created the characters back then. So that was really great. Going over to Nick, Nick, what games do you feel out there that have taken the concept of bringing something old back to next generation?
We were talking a bit before we started this, and so I'm going to steal it. But Street Fighter 4.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so. I mean, you can tell what they had a vision to make that game Street Fighter. They took the good parts. They didn't try to put it into a third arena fighting style game. They kept it Street Fighter. And then they push the character designs to the limits. I mean, the combination of shader work, the textures, the obvious planning to create characters that are just visually expressive. They did a great job of taking, this old school and this, we have all stared at Street Fighter characters our entire life.
Yeah.
I mean, they're obviously one of the most scrutinized characters in the world. Yet they were able to bring them and make it refreshing. And I remember just seeing the movement they did, the animation that went into them, the special effects, kind of the, all of the overlays and all of everything that was going into it. It was like they were just trying to go crazy with it. And that was awesome. It was so refreshing to see everybody else was trying to bring their game into the new age, and
realistic graphics.
Yeah, and they were dumbing it down. I mean, they're making it they're trying to be too serious. And I think the balance is that you need to understand your game, and then you need to translate that. So relative to Rise of the Triad is a crazy ass game. I mean, the developers obviously wanted just to have the craziest things in there, do some crazy stuff, and just have shit going everywhere. Yeah, I mean, it was they were just throwing it at the screen, and this is what they were getting.
Yeah, it just wouldn't work if it was serious. Like
exactly,
if you'd gone down this, the same path which every other first-person shooter, not to speak bad of them, has gone. Everything's super real now. It's just like everything's so modern day. It's like, oh, where's the escapism gone?
I think that's what makes it so great, that we actually have super serious graphics in the game. We have, we're going for a really realistic, maybe even hyper-realistic look in the game. And when you see it, you think, wow, this looks really good. And then when you play it, it's just totally ridiculous.
Yeah, it's still crazy. It pretends to look, serious and stuff, but then it's fucking ape shit.
That's what is so cool about it. How about you, Arturo? What game out there do you feel have done this whole thing of bringing, characters per se from their old games into the new era and doing it in a great way?
I think this remake of Halo.
Anniversary.
Yes, it was a good thing because I think the main goal of the developers was be respectfully to the old gameplay. They had even the same collision meshes, the same map layout, and I think the graphic improvement was really good. And the good thing was it didn't interfere in the gameplay. So I think these guys really know how to take something and make something for people that is really crazy about it. Halo fans are really hardcore fans. So I think it's really hard to do something that don't make them get in rage mode,
Yeah.
And again, that's one specific studio that I pretty much think that in our development chat room, the company that has gotten the most links to asset drops on Polycount has been from 343. Because I don't know any of these characters, but every time we talk about something related to Halo 4, you guys name drop these artists that have been working on the characters and environments, and they got some great people together there, definitely. And again, re-envision of Master Chief, that is another really, really hard thing to do, because you have this iconic character, and what makes the character iconic? Is that he's green? Is it his visor?
Yeah, you take away the helmet, and it's not Master Chief anymore.
Exactly. And another game that
Fred, we're getting into the Halo territory. You gotta be careful, man. Don't get all hot and flustered, man.
Another game that I really think has done a great job on this is Batman Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. Basically because they decided not to do the realistic interpretation that is being shown in the Christian Bale movies, but basically decided to let's go apeshit and create this steroid Hulk monster Batman like he looks in the actual comic book, and then put him into this realistic graphics. I love stuff like that. It's the same thing when Chris, you redid the Duke Nukem. It's like, just make him super buff, like inhuman buff. He needs to look like a monster. Because that's what he looked like on the Duke 3D cover. He looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, I mean, they literally just took Arnie and gave him some sunglasses and a cigar. He even had the sunglasses beforehand because it was from the Terminator.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think the big difference between Duke Nukem Forever and DNF was the age was a lot different. Theirs was really, he was young and he not aged a day and stuff. Yeah. Whereas ours, he'd been through some shit. He was old and grizzled and scars and stuff. He'd been through hell, and now he's twice as big.
That's stuff we like. I think we got a great sense of of that whole thing with, you know, the gritty, serious universe, but you know, placing something ridiculous and really, really funny in it. And I think that's what makes the you know, 3D Realms games so great, because they had these things. They had, you know, speaking of the 3 games that are maybe their most you know, their in-house most known games, 3D first-person shooters, Rise of the Triad, Duke Nukem 3D, and Shadow Warrior. You know, they did other big titles, but in cooperation with other developers like Prey and Max Payne. But those 3 games per se are also these ridiculous characters from, you know, 3 different backgrounds, 3 different, you know, series and environments, but still realistic environments and totally unrealistic characters that just go crazy. And you know, I really believe that makes up for some great material for character artists.
Yeah, I like that they keep it fun above all else.
Exactly.
They don't forget that.
All right, guys. Thank you very much, guys, for joining me, and I will see you next time.